In today's video, I'll be doing a walkthrough of the May 2021 SAT writing section. I've scored perfectly on back-to-back SAT writing sections, and as I go through this past test, I'm going to show you the most efficient way to answer each and every question. So with all that being said, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, questions 1 through 11 are based on the following passage in supplementary material. Shedding light on glowing coral. Some corals are fluorescent. Okay, and then I see I have a comma. Keep in mind what I just read there. That's an independent clause. This means that they absorb one color of light and emit a different one. That would be another independent clause connected with only a comma and not one of the fanboys, so I can't choose that. Saying which it means, okay, we wouldn't say which it means. That's really wordy, so B would be wrong. If I look at C, if I was to say some corals are fluorescent and meaning that they absorb one color of light and emit a different one, that also would make sense. Okay, ultimately here, we can put in a comma and then just go with meaning. Okay, some corals are fluorescent, meaning that they absorb one color of light and emit a different one. Okay, this ultimately will be our correct answer. If we look at all the other options, okay, A is a comma splice. If we look at answer choice C, C doesn't have a subject there. If we were to just say, and meaning that they absorb one color of light and emit a different one, there's no subject there. And then if we were to say which it means, that also wouldn't make sense, okay? Adding it there would also make that another independent clause, okay? Because it would be, it means that they absorb one color of light and emit a different one, so that one would also be a comma splice then. So D has to be our correct answer there. Okay, scientists have learned that shallow water corals fluoresce as part of symbiotic or mutually beneficial relationship with algae living inside. This is going to have to be them, and the reason that we know that is because we have to go back and find the subject we're referring to. Ultimately, we know that the coral fluorescent as part of a symbiotic relationship with algae living inside of the corals. Okay, corals is plural. Since corals is plural, we have to have answer choice B because that's the only answer choice that is plural. Okay, and then we have by absorbing potentially harmful ultraviolet light and emitting safer pink or purple light, fluorescent corals effectively provide a sunblock for the algae. Now we're going to combine these sentences. Ideally, I'd probably be looking at having some sort of comma with which here, just without looking at the answer choices, just because, you know, generally if we're referring to two of the same subjects back to back like this in a combining sentence questions, we just look to get rid of one. And then, you know, an easy way to do it is just to add, you know, which or who or whatever you got to do here. In this case, it'd be which, since we're just referring to algae. So if I look at my options, since I'm combining sentences, I'm going to start with my shortest answer first. I'm going to start with option A. We have algae, which through photosynthesis produce oxygen and other products that the corals need. That's ultimately perfect. Okay, it's grammatically correct, right? We have which is non-essential here, right? So we could just take that out. Or I'm sorry, not which is non-essential, right? Through photosynthesis is non-essential. We would have fluorescent corals effectively provide a sunblock for the algae, which produce oxygen and other products that the corals need, right? So the part that's non-essential here is actually through photosynthesis, right? So ultimately that is grammatically correct. It's condensed, it's efficient, so that'll be our answer. I'll show you why B, C, and D are incorrect as well here. B, if we were to have algae happening through photosynthesis, that right there is immediately super wordy, so you're not going to want to pick it. C, algae and the corals need oxygen and other products produced by the algae. Repeating algae twice, okay, that's inefficient, so you don't want to do that. And then this happens through photosynthesis, also very wordy. Algae with the production of oxygen and other products that the corals need coming from the algae's photosynthesis. Once again, repeating algae twice there. And if you count this part right here by that number 3, it's 3 times, right? So obviously very wordy there as well. Okay, so answer choice A will be our correct answer. Looking at number 4. However, this finding does not explain why corals in deeper water, where sunlight is less intense, also fluoresce. All right, so we have, however, this finding does not explain why corals in deeper water, and then we have where sunlight is less intense, also fluoresce. We got to keep in mind we have a non-essential phrase or clause right here, right? Because the reason I looked for that is because when I, finished reading through the sentence, I saw that comma there. Okay, after intense, that's indicating to me that I'm probably looking at a non-essential phrase or clause. And then I see if I was to remove what I'm going to highlight in green here, okay, my sentence would still make sense. And then since I'm ending the non-essential phrase or clause with a comma, I need to have a comma before water then. Okay, so if I look at my options, only answer choice with a comma before water is answer choice C. C will be my correct answer. Hoping to shed light on the mystery, a team of marine biologists from England and Israel began studying the chlorophyll, light-absorbing pigments involved in photosynthesis within symbiotic algae. They exposed a sample of coral to different colors of light, finding that blue light, the most lavish color of light in deep water, we wouldn't describe, any sort of color of light as lavish. That wouldn't make sense. Lavish basically means like, sort of an image of wealthy, rich type of, material. We also wouldn't describe it as the most generous color of light. We would describe it as the most abundant color of light. We wouldn't describe light as overflowing. That wouldn't make sense. Our answer for 5 would be C. It's the only answer choice that would be used to describe light. If we look at 6 now, we have, however, red-orange light, the color emitted by deep water corals, penetrated farther into the coral tissue, reaching more of the chlorophyll inside. The team therefore hypothesized that deep water corals, we don't need any sort of punctuation, splitting up hypothesized in that, or any punctuation after that. Okay, so right here we just look for answer choice that doesn't have any punctuation because we don't need any here. Okay, so our answer there would be D. Okay, no reason to have any punctuation there. When we say the team therefore hypothesized that deep water corals conversion of blue light into red-orange light maximizes photosynthesis, there's no need for splitting that at all with any sort of punctuation there. Okay, so that right there is just testing to make sure you don't toss in random punctuation where it doesn't need to be. All right, and then if we go ahead and read on, we have contributing to better overall coral survival. We keep going, we've got a 1 here. I'm going to find what sentence I got to place. We have the writer wants to add the following sentence to this paragraph, so question 10. Okay, so we have they began by placing, okay, they began. Okay, so I'm probably going to be discussing potentially an experiment before this, or at least introducing it, and then this would be when we start it. So they began by placing echinophilia that expressed a red fluorescent protein and non-fluorescent echinophilia into an aquarium that was exposed to blue light. The best placement for the sentence is where? All right, so in this case, like I said, when we start with they began, it means we're probably going to say, hey, we have this experiment, and then once we start describing it, then we're going to put this sentence in. So that's a pretty clear indicator as far as where I'm going to want to start. So I'm going to go ahead and read from sentence number 1. To test this hypothesis, the research team conducted a 2-year experiment that compared the survival of fluorescent and non-fluorescent specimens from the genus Echinophloriae under conditions that simulated deep water light. Okay, so now I'm introducing my experiment. Here I have after 12 months, the fluorescent echinophilia were deteriorating. Okay, now I'm asked for, some sort of interpretation from the graph. I'll quick do that. Just one thing I want to note here though, is that since we're saying after 12 months here, I'm probably going to want to place my sentence that I'm placing right there between 1 and 2. But I'm going to quick finish reading sentence 2 before I do that. So let me just quick go and provide an accurate interpretation of the graph, right? So after 12 months, fluorescent echinophilia were what? Okay, so 12 months, we have our fluorescent in this gray color, and then we look at 12 months, we see that it's at 100% just like it is all throughout this chart. Okay, so the fluorescent ultimately are at 100% survival throughout the entire duration of the experiment. Okay, so ultimately they're not deteriorating. Okay, they are thriving, obviously, because they're at 100% survival rate. C, higher in number than they were at the start, no, and then D at the lowest percent in the study, no. Okay, so our answer there would be B for 7. Now, let's finish reading the sentence a minute. But only about 80% of non-fluorescent echinophilia survives. We're describing results. So if we're going to talk about the experiment beginning, we have to place it before sentence 2, but after sentence 1. So we can go ahead and answer that. It's going to be after sentence 1, so that'll be answer choice B. Going up to number 8, which choice offers accurate information from the graph? So we got around the 19th month mark, the non-fluorescent echinophilia had dwindled to about blank percent of their original amount. Okay, non-fluorescent at 19 months. So this column here, right, we're looking at the non-fluorescent, so that'd be the black column, which is going to obviously end up going over here to 20. So 20% survival rate. So our answer there would be C. Looking at number 9 now. If we go ahead and keep reading, we have by 22 months, the non-fluorescent echinophilia died off completely, while 100% of the fluorescent echinophilia still lived. These results might suggest that the red-orange glow of deep water corals might indeed be a symbiotic survival mechanism, just like those of corals. I know that this can't be right because that's plural, right? And I have to have something singular because we're referring to the mechanism, which is singular. Okay, so I can get rid of answer choice A, no change. Okay, if I look at the results of the sun blocking glow or deleting the underlined portion, I can't delete the underlined portion because I'm not comparing the same two things then, right? Because then I would have some sort of symbiotic survival mechanism, just like corals in shallow waters. That's not indicating any sort of symbiotic survival mechanism. So I can get rid of D. If I look at the results of corals in shallow waters, once again, that's not indicating any sort of symbiotic survival mechanism, so my answer's got to be C. The sun-blocking glow of corals in shallow waters, which we know is a symbiotic survival mechanism then. Okay, so right there, we've answered all our questions up to 10. We'll go to 11. The researchers hope that their finding can be used to improve coral conservation plans. Now I got to transition to the next sentence. Some plans propose moving threatened shallow water corals to deep waters, but this study suggests that without the right fluorescent pigments, those corals might not survive relocation. Okay, so ultimately we are giving an example of how the findings can be used to improve coral conservation plans. Okay, we see that example evident in this, next sentence when we, directly discuss an example. So that's pretty clear it's going to be A. Okay, so answer for 11 will be A. Questions 12 to 22 are based on the following passage: thinking small and going green. In today's marketplace, there is a growing demand for environmentally friendly business practices. Okay, once again, no need for any sort of punctuation between for and environmentally. This question is just testing to make sure you don't toss in random punctuation. Okay, so no need for any punctuation there. Answer there would be D. Okay, you don't have any sort of non-essential phrase or clause. I know some people would think, oh, comma there, I'm looking at a non-essential phrase or clause. No, you're not. Okay, in this case, the comma is just because we have this introductory phrase, right? In today's marketplace, there is a growing demand for environmentally friendly business practices. Okay, nothing is non-essential there. You can't take this, which I'm boxing up, out, right? There's a growing demand for. You can't take that out and have the sentence still make sense. It would read, in today's marketplace, environmentally friendly business practices. Okay, that wouldn't make sense, obviously. Okay, so answer there would be D. 13. Okay, we can go ahead and read down to it. We have, according to a 2009 survey by the Boston Consulting Group, 73% of consumers think it is important for companies to have good environmental records. Okay, we have at this point, the writer wants to present an argument that will be refuted in the next part of the sentence. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? So we have to know what we're refuting, so we have to read on to this part right here. Small businesses also stand to gain by going green. A 2014 University of Arkansas study found that the benefits of environmental initiatives were actually higher for small businesses than for Fortune 500 companies. We can quick answer 14 here. Saying then for Fortune 500 companies is a great comparison. Okay, nothing wrong with that. If we look at options B, C, and D, okay, we can't just say D than Fortune 500 companies because we're not, just comparing small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. We're actually comparing the benefits, right? So in this case, it would just read, University of Arkansas study found that the benefits of environmental initiatives were actually higher for small businesses than Fortune 500 companies. We'd be comparing the wrong thing there. Okay, we have to say there then for, because that way we're comparing the benefits, right? So we can't just say than. Saying compared to the benefits of or then the initiatives of, that gets really wordy, right? So we just want to keep it concise with answer choice A there. Going back to 13 now. Okay, ultimately, what are we, setting up to refute, right? Well, ultimately, we see small businesses are going to, stand to gain the most by going green over these large Fortune 500 companies. So we just want an answer choice that would indicate the opposite, so that way we can refute that in the next part of the sentence. We have option A, though there is limited evidence that greening initiatives increase employee morale. No, we want to talk about small business versus, large business. B, despite the incentives offered by the federal government for the use of renewable energy. That one right there, also pretty shaky, doesn't directly talk about, large versus small businesses. So I'm just going to leave that with a probably wrong, but we can come back to it if we don't see anything else. C, well, some claim that only large corporations can afford to invest in eco-minded initiatives. Once again, there we're kind of less focused on the investing in eco-minded initiatives. So once again, not really a big fan of that one either. And then D, as companies and individuals become increasingly concerned about dwindling natural resources. Okay, we can get rid of D for sure. Okay, so then looking at between B and C here. Okay, well, some claim that only large corporations can afford to invest in eco-mining initiatives. Ultimately, okay, we know that we go on to talk about why it's actually more beneficial for small companies to do that. So that is a direct refutation. Okay, so that's actually perfect. And if we look at B a minute, saying despite the incentives offered by the federal government for the use of renewable energy, we don't actually go on to discuss anything about the incentives from the federal government, so that one wouldn't make sense either. Okay, so we can get rid of B. Okay, perfect answer there is C, because ultimately we refute that directly in the next sentence where we talk about how small business should be the ones who are actually more focused on eco-minded initiatives because they benefit the most. All right, and then looking back up, let's say we've answered everything there, so we can go down. Measures to reduce resource consumption can actually help small businesses both directly by lowering costs and raising revenues and indirectly by attracting new customers and even employees. 15, which choice provides the most effective transition from the previous paragraph? Ultimately, we're talking about benefits to small businesses. We have option A, founded in 1976, AJ's Auto Repair is a shop that has exceeded in improving its bottom line through an eco-friendly approach. Okay, so ultimately here, we see that we're talking about what we need to have here is obviously some sort of small business. Saying the year it's founded really does nothing for us here. So I'm not really liking that. So we can get rid of A. If we look at B, servicing motorhomes as well as cars, AJ's Auto Repair. Okay, once again, that's not really focusing on that transition from just talking about small businesses. If you look at C, with a staff of about 15 people, AJ's Auto Repair, yeah, that may be showing it's a small business, but it's still not a great transition. If I look at answer choice D, one such business, AJ's Auto Repair, one such business being a small business, AJ's Auto Repair in Salem, Oregon, has succeeded in improving its bottom line through an eco-friendly approach. That's perfect. It's a really great transition ultimately because we refer to these small businesses and then we give an example of what we were just talking about in the previous paragraph. So that's really strong there. And if we look at 16, by burning oil used for heat instead of chucking it out, that's obviously not going to be a right answer there. The company saves up to $10,000 per year. We want to maintain an academic tone, right? Academic style that has been used throughout the passage. We wouldn't say junking it either, okay? Disposing of it, that's perfect. It's an academic tone, maintains the tone of our passage. Tossing it out, once again, that's kind of too much slang there. Okay, if we look down here, we got Indeed AJ's, and then we have the option of has saved a total of more than $200,000 over a 10-year period from its screening efforts. One thing I'm not a big fan of here is saying a total of and then giving, more than $200,000. Obviously, we could just say has saved there and get rid of this. Okay, so I don't like that. Off the bat, I see we do have has saved as an option, so that'd pretty much be perfect. And I'm just going to quick touch on why C and D are wrong here as well. We see that we would have savings have exceeded. Once again, it's kind of that same thing. We already say more than, so saying exceeded wouldn't make sense. And then saying total savings have been, that one wouldn't really make sense either. If we were to say Indeed AJ's total savings have been more than 200,000. Once again, that gets really wordy. We can make that a lot more concise by just saying has saved, right? And also we know it's a total because we give the number. Okay, so it just doesn't make sense. We don't have to say total. We can just say savings, okay? Or has saved, right? Because we know that we're referring to the savings there. All right. Moreover, the AJ's example shows that companies can actually make money while generating less waste. AJ's recently participated in a program that provided environmentally safe trunk light switches to customers. The first 90 people who came in for a free switch replacement ended up spending over $26,000 in other repairs. Moving on. Another small business that has made sustainability profitable is Transcendentist, a dental practice in Berkeley, California. While most dental offices rely on wasteful disposable products, Transcendentist, however, okay, we already said well, so we don't need to repeat however. Okay, both of those are kind of used to indicate, kind of that contrast. So we don't need to say however. I'm going to get rid of A. If I look at B saying but, once again, we don't need to repeat that contrast. Whereas, once again, we don't need to repeat that contrast. We have that from saying well. So transcendentist works perfectly. It works grammatically as well. We start with a dependent clause here. Okay, after dependent clause at the beginning of a sentence, you need a comma, and then you can go straight into your subject, right? So transcendentist introduced a line of reusable supplies. Okay, that's perfectly fine, including cotton cloth headrest. Not only does Transcendentist save money by cutting spending on disposable products, it also profits by selling its reusable products to dentists across the country. And then we have which choice results in the most effective transition to the next sentence. So we'll keep reading. Green initiatives also strengthen the company's image. Okay, we have to read the next sentence to decide what we're going to do for 19, so we'll do that. The founder of AJ's, Bob Anderson. Okay, I need a comma after here. How do I know that? Well, I just said the founder of AJ's, and now if I have Bob Anderson, I could remove that. Okay, and my sentence would still make sense. It would just say the founder of AJ's estimates that the company. Okay, so obviously that's fine. So we're going to need a comma after Bob Anderson. Okay, so if I look at my options, I can get rid of D, I can get rid of A. Looking at between these two, I don't need anything after estimates, right? Okay, because that's a verb, and then we're just going into, the object of the verb, so we don't need to split those apart. So C is incorrect. My answer there would be B. Okay, the founder of AJ's estimates that the company's green reputation has increased its customer base by at least 18%. Okay, how can we set that up? We have option A, of which can yield tangible benefits. Did we just describe a tangible benefit? Yes, so that looks pretty strong. If we look at B, rewarding the company's loyal customers, we know it said that there were new customers, okay, not loyal customers, right? It increased its customer base, which means that there are new customers. Okay, if you're increasing your customer base, you're getting new customers, not rewarding loyal customers. C, although its image isn't everything, that wouldn't make sense because we'd just pretty much be directly contrasting what we just said above here, so that would make no sense. D, a key component in attracting new employees. We don't go on to discuss the new employees in that next sentence, so our answer there would have to be A. All right, moving on, looks like we answered everything there. Let me just quick check if we've answered up here. We have. Okay, so we go ahead and keep going. We've got 21, which choice provides a second example that is most similar to the one in the previous sentence. All right, so we know in our previous sentence, we talked about an increase in the customer base, ultimately benefiting and yielding tangible results, right, for going green. So if we have option A, Anderson ensures that the company stays in compliance with government regulations. That's not indicating any sort of tangible benefit. B, and yet another example of their commitment to efficiency, Anderson and his team incorporated oil tanks into workbenches to save space. Saving space isn't really going green necessarily. Okay, so that's not a great example. Also, it's not describing a tangible benefit. It's just describing another action on his part. C, some local chambers of commerce offer free greening assistance to small business owners. That's not showing another tangible result. And then D, Transcendentist attracts up to 40 new clients per month, thanks in part to media attention for its green initiatives. That's directly supporting our claim. It's providing a second example to support our claim, right? So that's perfect. If we look at 22 now, companies with eco-friendly practices appeal not only to environmentally conscious clientele, but also to prospective employees. No, that would be prospective employees, okay? Perspective is like, how you view an issue. Prospective are employees who are looking at potentially joining a, company, okay? And it wouldn't be respective or receptive, okay? It's prospective employees. So that's pretty much just understanding the definition of prospective there. Storied architecture. A survey of the buildings designed by Ghanaian British architect David Adjaye reveals no obvious signature style. His Moscow School of Management, Skolkovo in Russia, features a two-story, 150-meter wide circular base, on top of which blank 4 differently sized rectangular prisms. Okay, so in this case, what we have to determine here, if we take a look at number 23, is ultimately going to be the number of our subject, right? Number of our subject and then potentially tense, okay, because we're dealing with a verb. Now, in determining the number of our subject here, a key thing is that we got to make sure that we are ignoring any prepositional phrases, okay? So in this case, right, if we take a look at what we're referring to, okay, we don't actually end up dealing with prepositional phrases here, okay? If we take a look here, on top of which blank 4 differently sized rectangular prisms, okay, so obviously it's going to have to be plural, right, because we have that 4 there, okay, it's 4 differently sized rectangular prisms, that's our subject, okay, and since our subject's plural, obviously our verb's gonna have to be plural, so if we look at our options, is singular, we know there is also singular because it has that is, and then if we've got option A, once again, is placed, okay, so those are all singular, we need it to be plural, so our answer there would be C. Okay, so we don't ultimately have any prepositional phrases, but just in general, when you're trying to find the number of your subject, do watch out for that. But in this case, we don't have any. Okay, but since we do have that 4, it's indicating to us that we have obviously a plural subject, therefore we need the plural verb are. All right, continuing reading. Tiled in uneven herringbone patterns out of transparent and colored glass panels, perhaps more accurately described as a complex of buildings than a single building, the structure looks as though someone has balanced giant mismatched blocks on top of a disk. Another of Adahi's project, the Francis A. Gregory Neighborhood Library in Washington, D.C., features exterior walls that resemble a tilted chalkboard. Alternating clear and opaque squares create a geometric diamond pattern. Okay, when we say features exterior walls that resemble a tilted checkerboard, we don't need to ultimately have any punctuation here. Okay, when we say what something resembles, no need for any punctuation there. Okay, and then the other thing that we see is that we have another independent clause here. Okay, so obviously what we just read there, and I'll just go ahead and highlight in green so you can see what I'm referring to. When we say another of Adahi's projects, the Francis A. Gregory Neighborhood Library in Washington, D.C., okay, this right here is our independent clause, right? Another of Adahi's project features exterior walls that resemble a tilted checkerboard. That right there is an independent clause. And then we also have an independent clause right here. Alternating clear and opaque squares create a geometric diamond pattern. So if we're going to connect two independent clauses, in this case, we see that, we're ultimately having a second independent clause, which is describing or illustrating the idea in the first, because in the first we say it resembles a tilted checkerboard, and now we describe, how that looks, so we're illustrating that idea. We're going to want to connect that with a colon if that's an option, which I'm assuming it will be here. So if we look up, we see that we have to make sure that we get rid of, right, that any sort of punctuation between resemble and a tilted, so we can get rid of A, obviously. And then if we look at our endings, okay, we see in option B, we'd have a comma splice. Option C, we'd have a run-on sentence. So our answer there would have to be answer choice D, right? We got to connect those two independent clauses with a colon. Okay, and in Doha, Qatar, a nondescript residence blends in with surrounding monochrome beige stone structures. Each of these designs is distinctive in that no particular texture, material, shape, or pattern identifies the building as one of Adahi's. Okay, 25, which choice most effectively establishes the main topic of the paragraph? So we need to read on to figure out what the main topic is. We have for each project, Adahi reviews extensive research about the locale where the building will be constructed. Our options are reviews extensive research, or reviews and examines lots of extensive, that's wordy. C, reviews a lot of extensive research. Once again, extensive means the same thing as a lot, so that would be being repetitive or redundant. Examines and reviews means the same thing, so that's repetitive or redundant. Our answer there would be A, to avoid repetition and redundancy. All right, moving on, we have he considers. Okay, and it looks like if we look at 27 a minute, we have different tenses, potentially different numbers of our verbs. It looks like all our numbers are probably the same, so we're probably dealing with tense here, right? So if we scroll up a minute, we see that up here in 26, we had reviews. Okay, so just present tense there. Then if we look here, we're probably going to want to have reviews as well. I'll just go ahead and kind of look for other verbs in the sentence. Looks like we don't have any others in the sentence. If I look at my next sentence, various databases provide him. Okay, once again, present tense. So obviously we're dealing in the present tense here, so we got to make sure we maintain that. Okay, so we wouldn't say did consider. Okay, we wouldn't say had considered here. Okay, as far as is considering versus considers, it would just be he considers the local governing structure in issues of social justice, right? We just got to keep that present tense. So our answer there would be A. Okay, no need for is considering there. Next thing. We've got Adahi also studies the history of the site and the people who will be using the building. So central is this research to Adahi's design processes. That his architecture firm, keep in mind, process doesn't own anything here. Okay, so there's no need for an apostrophe. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of answer choice A. Okay, also, next thing I'm seeing, right, where is this apostrophe going here? Because obviously he does, have possession over his design process. We have to keep in mind what his actual name is, which is Adahi, it looks like, right? If I scroll up a minute, we can see that. Okay, if I go up here, okay, we see that it ends in an E, not an S, right? So that apostrophe has to come between the E and the S. Okay, so if we go ahead and find the answer choice that has that, we can get rid of C. Okay, we know that he does own the design process, so our answer there would have to be B for 28. Okay, going back up to 25 now. Okay, which choice most effectively establishes the main topic of the paragraph? Ultimately here, what's our paragraph talking about? Well, it's talking about how much research he does, right? It's talking about how he's reviewing extensive research. He's using databases to collect relevant geological information. He's studying the history site. So basically all about his research process before he actually starts building. So you have option A, Adahi's architecture firm is staffed with professionals who represent a wide range of architectural perspectives. Now B, some architecture experts have suggested there may be recurring trends. For example, the way Adahi uses walls not only to divide but also to create space for public interaction. No. C, given that Adahi will likely design more buildings over the course of his career, it's possible, even probable, that a signature style will emerge. No. And then D, what is common to Adahi's building is something that can't be seen, a deeply research-focused design process. That's perfect. We want to focus on that research aspect here because that's the main point of our paragraph. All right, moving on to question 29.